Okay, so we're dealing with a really cool data set here. This is called the ELS, the Education Longitudinal Study of 2002. And what it is in 2002, the National Center for Education Statistics, the NCES, took a random sample of 750 schools or so across the country. Within each school, they then randomly sampled 20 to 30 students. So we end up getting about 16,000 students. That's somewhat of a random sample. There's a little bit of more to that, but the point is any student in the country could have been selected for this sample. And there were 3 million students at that time, 3 million sophomores in 2002. So once they had this sample, they then interviewed the student extensively, and I mean extensively, all kinds of questions about their friends, their sports, their anxiety towards different subjects, their confidence in different subjects, their plans for the future, all kinds of variables. They then interviewed a parent for each student, an English teacher for each student, a math teacher for each student. The student took a standardized English test, a standardized math test, and they interviewed the principal and the librarian at every school where students were taken for the sample. So you get this massive amount of data. So this is about 2,000 variables on each student in the year 2002. And that's not it. So then 2 years later, 2004, they go back and contact all these students again, do another set of interviews. 2006, they do it again. They get these students. Now, this is not easy to get students back. So keep in mind, 4 years after sophomore year, these students have now spread out. They're all over the world, all kinds of crazy places. And the NCES agents have to try to find them because they want a high response rate. If too many students drop out of the sample, then we don't know if the students who dropped out are similar enough to the students who didn't drop out to really make the kind of conclusions that we'd like to make statistically. So they were persistent. If you ever get invited to participate in a longitudinal study, beware. I've read the reports on this. On average, the agents tried 50 times to contact a student before they actually gave up. Think about that, 50 times. And that's average. So there could have been some students that were hounded for quite a bit. Now, as a bonus, the longer it went, the more valuable that student was for the response rate, so they paid more and more money to participate in the survey. So if you ever get asked to participate in a longitudinal study, insider tip, do it and then hold out on the second or third wave. That's probably not the best secret to share, but the point is they did that for 2004, 2006, 2012. So these people are now 26 years old, 10 years after they were a high school sophomore. They've moved into careers, they've gotten married, had kids. All this information is in the data set. So because it's a longitudinal study where we tracked that nationally representative sample, there's two big things here. One, we can track their progress over time. We can look at what happened in high school and how it relates to what's happening in their young adult lives. Two, it's a nationally representative sample, so any kind of conclusions that we find, we can actually generalize to the entire country at that age group. Now, of course, if we start spreading into other age groups, we have to be a little careful looking at what kind of variables we're looking at. Is it something that changes rapidly over time? If not, however, there's reasonable argument that you could transfer it across at least certain years. So this data set, which is millions and millions and millions of dollars to create, to plan, to manage, there were pilot studies, all kinds of strategy, external investigations, it's available to you for free, most of it. There's a public data set and a restricted data set, and you'll see that in some of the codebook files. But the restricted data is also free. You just have to pass a set of security clearances, which are pretty intense. But the public data set has a lot of valuable data also that we can make conclusions, we can make statistical tests on, and that's what you're going to do in this focus task.